In just 47 seconds, $8.3 billion vanished from EU recovery funds. Giorgia Meloni didn't wait for diplomatic protocols. She slammed a classified dossier onto the podium and declared war on Brussels. Cameras zoomed in on the Italian Prime Minister's unflinching gaze. The European Council chamber fell into stunned silence. What did Meloni reveal about von der Leyen that made the entire EU establishment tremble with fear? I witnessed something unprecedented in the Justus Lipsius building this morning. The routine European Council summit transformed into a political execution within minutes. Meloni arrived carrying more than talking points. She brought ammunition that could destroy careers. At exactly 9:47 a.m., as von der Leyen began her prepared remarks on the digital services package, Meloni stood up. Protocol demanded she wait for the discussion period. Instead, she interrupted the Commission President mid-sentence. The translation booths went silent. Even the interpreters knew they were witnessing history. "Madam President," Meloni's voice cut through the chamber like a blade. "Before we discuss digital services, perhaps we should discuss the $8.3 billion in next-generation EU funds that somehow found their way to a consulting firm in Cyprus." The color drained from von der Leyen's face. For 3 seconds, the most powerful woman in Europe said nothing. Her hands gripped the podium so tightly her knuckles turned white. The Italian Prime Minister had just detonated a nuclear bomb in the heart of European politics. The document wasn't just bureaucratic paperwork. It was a forensic audit trail spanning 847 pages, leaked from the European Court of Auditors classified unit. The cover bore a red stamp. Restricted financial irregularities. Transaction reference EUF 2024 CY 8847. Meloni read aloud, her voice steady as a prosecutor delivering a verdict. $8.3 billion transferred from the Recovery and Resilience Facility to Archipelago Strategic Consulting, a firm incorporated in Limassol on September 3, 2024. Coincidentally, exactly 48 hours after this fund was established. The mathematics were damning. Archipelago Strategic had no prior EU contracts, no established track record, and according to Cypriot corporate records, only 3 employees. Yet somehow, this phantom company had secured the largest single consulting contract in EU history. The money was supposed to fund climate transition projects across Eastern Europe. Instead, it disappeared into a labyrinth of offshore accounts. Von der Leyen finally found her voice, but revealed more than intended. "This matter is under internal review," she stammered. "The Commission follows all established protocols." Meloni's laugh was cold as winter in Milan. "Internal review? Madam President, your own signature appears on the authorization memo dated September 1st, 2024, 2 days before this company even existed." The Italian Prime Minister held up a document that made von der Leyen visibly flinch. It was a photocopied authorization bearing the Commission President's distinctive signature, personally approving an emergency procurement waiver for strategic climate consulting services. The waiver bypassed all competitive bidding requirements and internal oversight mechanisms. What happened next shattered every convention of European diplomacy. Von der Leyen didn't deny the signature. She didn't claim forgery. Instead, she gathered her papers and stood to leave. The president of the European Commission was walking out of her own meeting rather than face questions about missing billions. "You cannot leave," Meloni's voice thundered across the chamber. "Article 17 of the Treaty on European Union requires the Commission to be fully accountable to this Parliament. $8.3 billion of taxpayer money demands an answer." The confrontation escalated beyond political theater into institutional crisis. German Chancellor Scholz sat frozen, unable to defend his political ally. French President Macron stared at his notes, refusing to meet anyone's gaze. The entire European project suddenly hung in balance as its most senior official fled from accountability. Meloni revealed the smoking gun that transformed scandal into criminal conspiracy. Wire transfer records showed $847,000 flowing from Archipelago Strategic to Euro Strategic Partners. The significance hit when Meloni read the firm's board. Heiko von der Leyen, managing partner, she announced. Son of the Commission President. The chamber erupted. Opposition MEPs began shouting demands for von der Leyen's immediate resignation. Even her own European People's Party allies sat in stunned silence. The Commission President had allegedly funneled EU recovery money to a company that then paid her own son's consulting firm. If proven, this wasn't just corruption. It was the systematic looting of funds meant to help Europe recover from economic crisis. The financial trail Meloni exposed revealed a web of connections that reached into the highest levels of European power. Bank records showed Archipelago Strategic had transferred $2.1 billion to environmental advisory services provided by 6 different consulting firms across 3 countries. None of these firms had delivered any tangible climate projects. The money had simply evaporated. Von der Leyen's attempted exit became a humiliating retreat. Security personnel blocked the doors on Meloni's orders, citing parliamentary procedure requiring the Commission President to answer direct questions about EU budget management. For the first time in the institution's history, the most senior EU official was being detained by her own subordinates. The Italian people contribute $19 billion annually to EU coffers, Meloni declared, her voice rising with righteous anger. We will not stand silently while those funds are stolen by bureaucrats who consider themselves above the law. The market reaction was devastating. The euro plummeted 1.4% within 20 minutes. Banking stocks crashed as investors fled EU institutions. Bond yields spiked as confidence collapsed. Twitter exploded with von der Leyen gate trending across 12 languages. TikTok videos of Meloni's dramatic confrontation reached 15 million views before lunch. The hashtag $8billion scandal dominated European social media as citizens demanded answers about where their tax money had gone. Inside the chamber, institutional breakdown continued. Von der Leyen attempted to respond, but her words deepened the crisis. These allegations are a coordinated attack on European integration, she claimed, voice shaking. Certain member states seek to undermine our project through inflammatory accusations. Meloni's response destroyed any remaining credibility von der Leyen possessed. Madam President, these are not allegations. These are bank records, wire transfer receipts, your own signature on procurement waivers. The only thing being undermined here is your ability to explain where $8.3 billion disappeared. The evidence Meloni presented painted a picture of systematic corruption operating at the highest levels of EU governance. Shell companies incorporated days before receiving massive contracts. Procurement waivers signed without oversight. Family members benefiting from contracts their relatives approved. The European Union's leadership had transformed the recovery fund into a personal piggy bank. As von der Leyen finally exited under escort, the political implications became clear. The Commission President's resignation was inevitable. Criminal investigations would follow. But more fundamentally, the legitimacy of EU institutions lay in ruins. How could Brussels demand fiscal responsibility from member states while its own leadership allegedly stole billions? The silence that followed von der Leyen's departure was deafening. 30 seconds passed without a single word spoken in a chamber that usually echoed with passionate debate. Even the most veteran diplomats had never witnessed such institutional humiliation. Meloni stood alone at the podium, holding documents that had just toppled the most powerful political figure in Europe. "This is not about Italy versus Brussels," she said quietly, her voice carrying across the hushed chamber. "This is about accountability versus corruption, democracy versus oligarchy, truth versus lies." The leaked documents revealed that the $8.3 billion theft was just the tip of the iceberg. Archipelago Strategic had been one of 17 mysterious consulting firms that received massive EU contracts without competitive bidding. The total amount missing from next-generation EU funds exceeded $47 billion. Nearly 10% of the entire recovery package had vanished into offshore accounts. Financial investigators would later discover that von der Leyen had created an entire shadow procurement system operating parallel to official EU contracting procedures. Emergency waivers, crisis provisions, and urgent climate needs became pretexts for bypassing every safeguard protecting taxpayer money. The personal cost to von der Leyen was immediate and brutal. Her political career ended the moment Meloni read her son's name aloud. But the institutional damage would last decades. Public trust in EU governance, already fragile after years of democratic deficit, shattered completely. European capitals erupted in crisis meetings as the scandal's implications became clear. How many other officials were involved? How many other contracts were fraudulent? How much money had actually been stolen? The questions multiplied faster than answers emerged. Meloni had achieved something unprecedented. She had single-handedly exposed the corruption rotting the heart of European institutions. With one dossier and 47 seconds of courage, the Italian Prime Minister had torn down the facade of technocratic competence that Brussels used to justify its existence. The immediate aftermath was chaos. Commission briefings were cancelled. The euro continued falling as investors fled European assets. Opposition parties demanded emergency sessions to investigate EU dealings. But amid the institutional wreckage, something profound had shifted. For the first time in decades, an EU leader had been held accountable for their actions. The untouchable technocrats who ruled Europe from Brussels had been shown to be as corrupt as any national politician they criticized. The documents Meloni revealed would fuel investigations for years. Criminal prosecutors in Italy, Germany, and Cyprus opened preliminary inquiries within hours. The European Public Prosecutor's Office, ironically created by von der Leyen herself, began reviewing the evidence for potential fraud charges. As the chamber finally emptied, Meloni remained at the podium for several minutes, staring at the seat von der Leyen had fled. She had just witnessed the collapse of a political order that had governed Europe for decades. Whether that collapse would lead to renewal or chaos remained to be seen. The $8.3 billion scandal was more than fraud. It was proof the European project had been captured by corrupt elites who viewed taxpayer money as personal property. Meloni hadn't just exposed von der Leyen, she exposed the system. History will remember this as the day European democracy fought back against oligarchy. 47 seconds of truth shattered decades of lies. The Queen of Europe had fallen, and her empire crumbled with her.